There was a time in Formula One history when every other team shook upon hearing the name Ferrari. The team was once so dominant that they were a favourite for millions around the planet. In the past few years, especially in the 2020 season, Ferrari failed to meet the high expectations the Formula One world had set for them. The 2022 season was Ferrari's worst in 40 years. Recovering from the humiliation, team principal Mattia Binotto sat down at the end of the season to think about just what went wrong. How and why did the team perform so badly? He isolated out a few key areas of the team's dynamics to improve on, and so the work began. Just like magic, he saw that their 2021 campaign was a great improvement over their previous season. So what improvements did the prancing horse really make? How does this make them a better team in general? In this video, we're going to discuss the team behind one of the great comebacks in Formula One. Last year, all the talk in the media was about the established rivalry between Red Bull and Mercedes. At the end of that season, the question on everyone's lips was this: which of these two will win the 2022 season? Little did we know that a third team would come speeding along to challenge the duopoly that exists between these teams. After all, the big two that we talk about now was the big three only as little as 3 years ago. It's easy to forget, but Ferrari finished second to Mercedes in the Constructors' title that year, with a driver on the podium in all but 4 of the 21 races staged that season, winning 3 in a row. Then, as we all know, the FIA intervened, and the team experienced its biggest decline in form in almost 40 years. Ferrari was consistently fast and reliable right from the start of the 2021 season. What makes Ferrari's return to form so remarkable is that it discovered massive amounts of missing speed at the conclusion of a regulatory era. This was when the rules had been in place for so long that you'd think that there was very little development potential left for them. Nevertheless, Ferrari discovered it. Let's take a closer look at what changed in the team between their disastrous 2020 season and their significantly improved season in 2021. When starting out the season, Ferrari had a very clear objective. The team was still recovering from the humiliation that they'd suffered, and the first step was to regain some of the respect that they once had. It was not going to be easy. In Formula One, dramatic changes in performance can take months or even years of painstaking planning to execute. This has to be done whilst making sure that the team operates within FIA rules. On their way back to the top, they could not afford to suffer any fines or penalties. The Maranello team just wasn't planning to get to the top, they were planning to remain there. Ferrari took a more proactive approach to making their improvements. They were one of the first teams to switch resources. They stopped developing their old models and shifted their focus to the future, which was the 2022 season and beyond. This gave them somewhat of a head start. Whilst Mercedes and Red Bull tore each other apart in a battle for the title, Ferrari bided its time, waiting for the right opportunity to appear. Their switch of resources was only the first of many moves that would differentiate them from other teams in the upcoming season. The most impressive change we can say they made is probably the work they did on their power units over the last 18 months. Last year, the team focused on the hybrid system, and they were able to not only accelerate a 2022 development forward to 2021, but they also delivered it with 8 races to go. It was a success in terms of both performance and dependability, and it was important in the team pushing ahead of McLaren and into P3. It was a pretty significant change, and not only in terms of design. Production of the unit was also much smoother, as well as the use. The Ferrari team worked tirelessly to bring it to life as much as they could. It was a very good push for Ferrari, and they could now test out their improvements in the field, figuring out what to tweak to produce even better results. Ferrari struggled to crack the top 10 in 2020, much alone compete for the big points, but they had no such issues in 2021. They recorded 38 top 10 finishes, more than any other team. Mercedes and Red Bull had 35 each, both Ferraris finishing in the points in 17 of 22 races. Binotto's team only failed to score once, and that was in France, when they couldn't adjust to the tyres given to them. As a result, their per race point average increased from 7.7 to 14.7. This type of form implies 3 favorable results. The package is speedier overall. They can get a lot out of it whilst pushing it to the limits. During the season, the average difference between Ferrari and McLaren was only 0.05 seconds. Yet they scored 48.5 points more. The car is significantly more reliable, with DNFs dropping from 6 in 2020 to 1 in Monaco, with a DNS for Leclerc. The consistency was significantly better too, with 73% of their stops under 3 seconds versus 48% the previous campaign. Average stop taking 2.55 seconds, down from 2.72 seconds, for an improvement of nearly 0.2 of a second. Ferrari became generally more solid during the race weekend, as they were more solid in the race preparations. They were also more solid in race management throughout the weekends themselves. They focused on almost every aspect of the race to ensure they performed as efficiently as possible. This showed in their numbers, and they managed to cut the gap between them and Mercedes by 0.3 of a second, bringing it down to 0.8 seconds. Even though it was a huge feat, they still had a lot of work to do. 0.8 seconds is still quite a significant gap in Formula 1. According to Binotto, what's more important is not always to be the fastest, but making sure you are consistent. So you know when the car is coming in, you know that within the 3 seconds you are finishing the pit stop, and it is not becoming 5, because then you have an issue on strategy and lose positions you were not expecting. The Ferrari team also has the support of their talented drivers. Carlos Sainz was one of the last season's biggest surprises in F1. When the squad signed the Spaniard, he was supposed to be a supporting cast member for Charles Leclerc's extraordinary talent. However, by the end of their first season together, Sainz had proved capable of matching him. While neither has done enough to compete with the likes of Lewis or Max Verstappen, I don't believe any other team has more skill in the garage. The proof is in their consistency throughout 2021. And recall that it was consistency, not flashes of brilliance, that allowed Ferrari to become the best of the rest in the title race. Consider this: at the end of the season, Verstappen and Sergio Perez were separated by 205 points, whilst Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas were separated by 161. Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo were separated by 45 points at McLaren. But what about Ferrari? Well, at the end of the season, the gap between Sainz and Leclerc was only 5.5 points. The truth is that if Ricciardo had been close to Norris, the contest for third place in the Constructors might have been quite fascinating. The Scuderia has a fast, reliable, and ambitious combination in Leclerc and Sainz. Furthermore, the drivers complement one another quite well, which has helped the team defeat McLaren in 2021. In a set of rules that allows vehicles to be close in terms of speed, the impact of these two drivers will be critical to Ferrari's campaign. This is the heart of the matter. Ferrari is still not the undisputed best. They're still a very long way from it. However, they are making great progress in a number of areas, which Binotto believes is encouraging. It's a step-by-step process, and by closing this gap, they can lay solid foundations for the future.